Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in the Cleveland studio.
A little late this week.
Yeah, we are late this week. We have a lot going on for, you. And football does get in the way of recording sometimes. We'll get to that later.
It does.
But before we talk about fun stuff.
Oh, this is fun.
Is this fun? Okay, well.
Bob Menendez getting indicted again for corruption. He's the Democratic senator, congressman out of New Jersey.
Yep.
And he's been brought up on corruption charges previously, and for lack of a better word, just was able to get out of it. The DOJ did not. Is he a senator? I think he might be. Oh, maybe he is a senator. I thought he was a congressman, but
I'm pretty sure he's a senator.
See, now I got to check. But he had been indicted before,
right,
and got out of it. And I'm sorry, he is a senator.
He was indicted before and was running for the Senate seat while I was working in New Jersey, and every commercial that was running against him was like, "This guy is a complete dirtbag." And he denied. He ended up getting off with a hung jury, I believe. So it's not like he completely walked.
But I mean, like, that's why I said it was like he was able to get out of it. They did not choose to re-indict him. Like, so these charges are stemming from new evidence. Right. And he is a senator, and the Senate Democrats, I just saw this, are calling for him to resign.
Yes, which
is a stark contrast to what the Republicans are doing on the other side, right? I mean, they got
Hobart tricking people off.
Well,
that's not a criminal offense.
Fine, but what's the congressman out of New York? George
Santos. Yeah,
George Santos or whatever. He had multiple names, and apparently is a scam artist, drag queen down in Brazil. I don't know. The guy got all sorts of issues. We know that he lied about everything on his resume, and yet, the Republicans and all that has kind of died down, but when it was really at the heat, like just after the election, when he gets elected, you had, Kevin McCarthy was just like, oh, well, we'll take a look at it, but, claiming everything is a witch hunt. And Democrats are just like, nah, Bob Menendez, you have all this unnecessary cash in your home. And, now here's the thing you had brought up to me about Bob Menendez and the gold bars in his house.
Yes.
And I told you, well, I don't know, like that could be, now listen, just the guy we just had on, Market Ben, he and I, like he actually told me, he's like, hey, it's a good idea to, invest in gold, have a little bit on hand because you never know. And I took that advice. I know that, he has gold bars. I don't want to say they're at his house or anything like that. I don't know where
at 1423,
right? But so I know that people have gold. Now I didn't invest in gold bars and have them in my home, but I did invest in gold in the market. Now Ben's point was I kind of avoided his point or disregarded it because the whole point was to have it on hand as a valuable asset. In case things go south with the market and digital and everything else. So I was somewhat in defense of Senator Menendez for having the gold until I hear a report that, when they look at his computer, he's trying to fence gold. How much can I get for 12 ounces of gold? How much can I get for 50 ounces of gold? And all this
other. Is this the Italian job?
Right. And I'm like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? So having gold is not necessarily an indicator that someone's doing something sketchy, but when they're trying to figure out how much they can get for it, just on Google, on just random sites, then that definitely raises some questions.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing was the extortion, right? So he was extorting people.
Him and his wife.
And I heard this said today. I was watching a lot of political stuff today. And the comment was from maybe Nancy Pelosi, like, his criminal matter is his business. That's fine. the law will play itself out. Ethically, even if he's not going to be found guilty, he's proven he's ethically incapable of remaining in that spot, and he's got to go.
Yeah. I mean, and that should be everybody's position. Democrat, Republican. Yes. Listen, I had no defense for this guy. If they got hard evidence on him extorting people and, pay for play and all that other bullshit, him and his wife, lock them up.
Absolutely.
I don't care.
Fuck them.
Like if Democrats lose the seat because of it, all right, well, at least you don't have a scumbag in that seat, at least, or at least you get rid of that one. Who knows who you replace him with? But
there's plenty more scumbags in New Jersey.
Right. I mean, George Santos is right across the bridge. But like I just I don't have an issue with because I read somewhere that who was it? Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
Old big head Charlie Kirk. He comes out and says the Democrats are doing this to distract from Donald Trump. The witch hunt that is all these indictments of Donald Trump. The Democrats are offering up one of their own as a distraction, and it's like, dude, nobody planted gold bars and cash in Bob Menendez's house. Nobody planted those emails or calls or anything else. This guy was flagrant and blatant with his corruption. He got busted, and we're holding him accountable. Yeah. Right? Like everyone is holding this guy accountable, and that's how it's supposed to work.
Right.
Not, I'm going to defend this guy because maybe I'm going to claim that it's a witch hunt and all this other bullshit. No. I've said the same thing about Biden. You show me hard evidence that he was taking money and doing deals while he was in the White House, then and abusing his power as vice president, then fucking burn him.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. I don't like the guy anyway. But even if I did, fucking burn him. Right? Like get that old bullshit out. Like whoever it is. Now the thing with Biden, no one's made the kid. There's a
whistleblower.
He was, a whistleblower that. Disappears and is indicted himself and is trying to get himself out of a jam. You got Rudy Giuliani, okay, who also is indicted and has clearly gone off his rocker. But you haven't shown me actual evidence. Oh, well, he was on a phone call and he said he wasn't on that phone call, so that means that he took money and show me the money in his account. We have forensic accountants who can trace money. Like, they could find money all over the world going back fucking 30 years. Show me where he illegally took money and he was able to benefit from it. I need you to show me that. You show me that, fucking take him down.
All right, I'm going to go hardcore pro-Democrat here. Because to your point, the Democrats are standing up with this guy. Good. It's not necessarily only because they're standing up and doing the right thing. It hurts their brand. Now, look at the Republican brand. They've got a 4-time indicted ex-president, and he's leading their primary polls overwhelmingly.
Yes.
I know I'm Captain Obvious. I get it. But how do you not contrast those two?
And even polls aside, now there's a split in the party now, right? You've got, the DeSantis loyalists. You've got the Trump loyalists. And then you've got a few other groups, the No Labels Party and the Never Trumpers. And so you're anti-Trump in the GOP, right? Like your hardline DeSantis people and your Never Trumpers. Their motivations are different.
Sure.
Right? Because most of them in some way, shape, or form have supported Trump's bullshit in the past, right? But now, they see that it's kind of run its course, so they're pushing for, some new blood. They'll still accept the same bullshit, right? But they recognize that maybe, Trump is not worth all the baggage that he comes with. So they've leaned into DeSantis. But it's not that they have an issue with Trump's, whatever.
Right.
It's more they have a different guy that they want to prop up. But when it comes to accountability down the line in the party, right? Like, so flipping to if this was a Republican senator, we've seen Republican Congress people and things like that with all sorts of issues relating to sexual harassment, rape, child porn, all that other stuff, and we get nothing out of them, right? They're zip blip, right? Meanwhile, and the one thing you can say about the Democrats, you fuck up with them, they'll eat you alive.
Look at the Al Franken.
Right.
Al Franken was... I still defend him because I feel like other people can't be more offended than the alleged victim. The woman that he was with on that USO thing, apparently they had a playful relationship, still not classy. He jumped on the sword.
Yes. But look, and I'm not an Al Franken fan. I don't like him. He was
love
kind
Al
of
Franken.
Pompous, assy to me, but he's a very bright guy, and he was, was good in his role, right, in what he did. Like, even though I wasn't a fan of his personality, humor, whatever you want to call it, he still, like, I mean, he made very pointed points, on the House floor. He was an advocate for the people, and what happened to him didn't seem fair, right? I mean, in looking back on it,
the crime,
right? And I look back on it, and I supported him going out at the time. I can acknowledge that. And looking back, was that the right call? Maybe not, right? But then I also have to look at, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because we've seen people do demonstratively way worse, and they still have their seats. George Santos being the main example.
Sure.
Right? You could even go to a Marjorie Taylor Greene with some of the shit with her, or Lauren Boebert with the, I mean, like
Matt Gaetz, we don't know if he...
Well, with Matt Gaetz, we know that he was paying for a girl who was underage to travel across state lines for sex. We know that. Now, we haven't, the charges were never brought, which what I tell you.
I think we were on the same page, that we were not going to come up.
I
don't throw the red challenge flag here, pal.
I wish I had one, because you were very, I don't want to say excited.
I was very much on the case of, fuck this guy, go get him. But I did also say, we need to actually have charges before you can shove the guy out the door.
That's fair.
Or you can say, hey, dude, you're out showing naked pictures on the floor
House
of Congress,
floor.
and your fellow congressmen are saying, dude, don't do that. That should be at least
plenty
the thing.
Right. But the broader point is, like, look, it's good that he's being held accountable by, his party. And if the shoe fucking fits, then put it on and get him out of here.
Agreed. Menendez gone anyway. So like I said, I watched a lot of the news in the last couple of days. I watched a lot of Newsmax, and I watched Mike Pence get interviewed on Newsmax, and he's not a dynamic man, but he's not nearly as stiff as he appeared when he was as vice president. He actually seemed like he had a personality and had done things when I saw him today.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. That's fair.
And his number one thing was talk about the border. And Newsmax's number one thing is talk about the border. Now, I don't know if the border is as bad as they're pretending, or I shouldn't say pretending. I don't know if it's as bad as they're reporting. I'd love to see a fair assessment by an NPR type group to say, yep, we're not politically affiliated and this is terrible and we need to do something. Or is this another scare the white people thing?
So this is what I'll tell you. It's that bad.
Okay.
I follow very closely a guy named Brandon Darby.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people don't like Brandon because he works for Breitbart.
Okay.
But Brandon he is an objective, independent person. He's got an interesting story. He was an FBI informant, and a lot of people on the right try to kind of give him shit about that. I won't get into the whole story now, but there are a lot of people who feel like he kind of saved his own ass. Other people feel like he kind of betrayed some of the people that he shouldn't have betrayed in what he did there. But he lives in Lubbock, Texas, which my mom spent a lot of time there, and we lived there when I was in Texas. So we have a connection there, and I've talked to him. He actually follows us on Twitter, X, whatever.
Yep.
And we've had exchanges back and forth. I've read his vertical on Breitbart. If you want to understand how bad it is at the border, I strongly urge people to go and read Brandon. I know it's Breitbart. I wish he would detach from him, because I think there are people who would listen to him, and fuck these people, but there are people who would absolutely like if he weren't affiliated with Breitbart and they read his material, it would change their view on what's happening at the border. It is brutal. The cartels are way worse than you can imagine. I don't even think these movies capture how ruthless and dangerous these groups are. People are terrified. Most of these people are from there's some from Mexico, but it's mostly El Salvador, Venezuela, Nicaragua. And these people are doing it because the situation is so bad. And then when they get to the border, once they get to certain places, a lot of times it is Mexico, these cartels are, turning them into mules or promising them shit that they absolutely will not, have no intention of delivering, but they're getting paid. There are people in Texas who live along the border who are a part of these operations. It's Texas. You would think that they would be the ones there with guns making sure no one crosses, but yet they're getting paid by the cartels to make sure that people have clear passage through. Sex abuse, child sex abuse, brutal working conditions, brutal travel conditions, finding dead bodies in box trucks, that have been abandoned, just finding dead bodies, kids drowning in the Rio Grande River trying to cross. It is awful.
The Biden administration needs to acknowledge it and have a fucking plan. And I don't know what the plan is. I said all along, building a wall is really dumb. And if you think the cartels couldn't get people through or over a wall, come on now. But I don't know what the solution is. A joint task force between Mexican military and U.S. military to fight the cartels was mentioned in this Newsmax article or story.
You know why? Maybe? That's unlikely, because the cartels are they own the government. They own the government, and so that would be very, very, very difficult to pull off. Because you literally do not know who you can trust. It is not like people don't. Here's the other thing. You have these journalists here complaining in the U.S., oh, Biden won't talk to us, and by not talking to us, you oppress. But listen, all these journalists that bitch and moan about their job here in the U.S., go try to report on the cartels in Mexico. Go ahead. Go try. You think, listen, it is nothing compared to the gangs here in the U.S., the worst of the worst you could think of, the MS-13, the Black King, pick a gang, Bloods, Crips, all that stuff. And then multiply it, pick a multiplier, and then go to Mexico.
I mean, remember that 3 people from, I want to say, North Carolina drove down and just got murdered because they assumed that they were part of another cartel.
Yeah. They didn't get murdered, they got kidnapped. And then we ended up getting those people back. It was a whole thing. Now, other people have been killed.
Yeah, I thought
that group actually got returned, but there was a short span this summer where you had a group that got down there, got kidnapped, they got returned. Another group went down there, got killed. They're not overstating how bad it is. It's a sticking point. And look. Kamala Harris was supposed to, her and their border czar, they were supposed to be attacking this. I don't even know if she's been down there, and if she has, it was for a photo op, and, a lot of the stuff they're doing, a lot of where the money is going is more humanitarian, which is good, but it's after people get there, and it's very after the fact. In terms of how to stop it, you have to address the cartel issue. And it's more than Mexico. It's
all the other places we named.
El Salvador, Ecuador, Venezuela, Nicaragua. You have to address those issues there, the reason why people are leaving. And then you need more border patrol. You need more judges. You need more lawyers. You need social workers. You need medical people. You need facilities that are not fucking prisons. You need to speed up the process. You need to figure out if you're going to return people back, you have to have a system for figuring out where to get them back to, and not just drop them off in fucking Mexico where they're not from.
They have nothing.
Right. It's like they have some humanitarian stuff. They've got some judges, some board, but you need a lot more. You need technology, drones, X-ray, night vision, all that like you
I'm talking about the refugees have nothing.
Oh,
They're arriving,
yes,
they got
yes.
nowhere to go,
Yeah, I thought you meant
clothes
like
on their back.
the administration has nothing
No,
in terms
they've
of a
got-
plan, but they don't.
Okay.
But yes, the people coming.
Different question, same answer.
Right, the people coming have nothing, but even listen, even if you want to be, you take the people portion out of it, and you're just talking about function of government and everything else. There's a lot I don't know what the number is. It's just it's multi-billions of dollars because of everything that you need. And do you even have the manpower? Do you have the number of judges that you need to speed up this process? Are there enough
Are
lawyers?
the judges safe enough to do that?
Right. I mean, do you have enough lawyers to divert and that are qualified to handle immigration at this level? And how do you speed up that process of verifying whether a person is a legitimate asylum seeker or just a person that's just trying to look for a better life? And then how do you deal with those?
Yeah.
Right.
Back to the solutions, though. We put a lot of money in the CIA, a lot of money in the DEA. Use it.
Yeah.
Use it for shit other than weed.
I mean, you mean as in terms of the CIA going down, getting involved?
Coming up with a solution, yeah. I mean, they're not not saying drop.
Okay, I just my fear, you don't want the CIA operating here on U.S. soil, and I'm sure
No.
already do.
I mean in Mexico.
No, exactly. Yes, CIA, DOJ, military. I don't know how you do it now, because here's the other problem, right? From a political standpoint, you get too much involvement. The U.S. pushing Mexico, right, for a solution,
right,
and the fear is that you push Mexico into the arms of China. And now you've got China and Mexico allied right at your front door, doorstep,
that's
whatever.
a fair point.
And China's already trying to make inroads into Mexico, so you don't want to push them all the way in to Chinese arms, because that we don't want.
Right? They're also a sovereign nation, so we can't do anything without their cooperation.
Exactly. And so you have to. It's a delicate situation. You can't just go in and force it. Now, then the question is, what is China, right? If we can't, then and China gets involved, what do? Does China see the cartels as a problem because it interferes with their overall plans? So maybe it ends up not being the end of the world. China cleans up the cartel problem, and then we just have the national security problem of them trying to fucking send missiles over the border. But not to mention all the from a financial standpoint, if Mexico starts dealing more with China and then our price of goods goes up because of the Chinese demand, then that's also a problem. But could they? But the flip side is, could China say, look, cartels weaken the United States because blah, 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 so let's just make it worse, and we do nothing with them under no circumstances to make that situation better, to just create more problems there and make it easier for us to do whatever and manipulate them, right? It could go either way. I don't know what China's stance would be on it. I have, the only way I see them helping is if they see the cartels as a problem to what their plans are. Right. And I see that could very well be something in play. But the flip side is it may not be, and they may say, let's fuck it.
Yeah. But I think them doing nothing can be a win for them.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. If they do nothing, but the
problem remains.
But they figured out a way to have a good, comfortable relationship with with the Mexican government and everything else, and Mexico is dealing with them and not dealing with us, and then we now are, we have the border problem that stays the same, which is bad, or gets worse, which is way bad. Again, that could be a win for them. I don't know which way they will go. Obviously, I'm leaning towards them probably not helping the situation. So we have to be very careful on how we craft this plan, how we integrate Mexico into it without alienating them. But also working with those other countries where, the legitimate root causes of, the immigration at the border, whether it be legal or illegal or asylum seeking or whatever, what's driving that problem.
Yeah.
And we know it's the cartel. It's without a doubt, it's the cartels.
Right. I mean, yeah. It's up to the pros to come up with a solution.
Right. And then the other problem is that we're also a giant customer for the cartels.
I was going to say, what percentage of their product ends up in the U.S.? I would bet it's if not,
I mean, it's
most.
Right. I mean, it's probably north of 75%. I mean, it's going to be more than 50, and all we know is that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, if not a trillion-dollar industry. So,
yep.
That's a lot of shit coming to us in all shapes, forms, sizes, and everything else, from cocaine to heroin. I mean, weed, I guess, but like we're less worried about weed, but meth, fentanyl
is the big one.
Like all those things, we are giant consumers of. Right, and
if I'm sorry, good.
The number one consumer of it, right? Consumers of it. It is a growing problem in China. It's it's a big problem in Europe. But we're
number one,
right? We are the VIP. So, for us to solve the issue, we have to somehow reduce demand here, and clearly saying it's illegal doesn't help.
Right.
So, how do we do that to reduce demand? But then, how do we get in and disrupt the actual supply by, eliminating or containing the cartels?
We learned in the 80s that the just say no plan does not work. But yeah, okay. Well, good insights on that. What's the name of the guy again?
It's Brandon Darby.
Brandon Darby. I'll probably text you later.
Yeah, you can find him on, like I said, you can find him on X. I think he's on Threads as well. You could read his column on Breitbart. It's obvious, it says border reporting, and he and his reporters. Listen, it's so fucked up. The reporters down there cannot use their real name because if the cartels find out who they are reporting on them, they'll kill them.
Yeah.
I know they've reported on reporters being killed down there. The point I was trying to make earlier. There are reporters every year there's different stories of journalists, that do reporting on the cartels and things going on, human trafficking, shit like that on the border, that end up dead. So it's a lot of it is hard to read because these stories are awful. They are tragic, and his column was consistent, has been consistent the last 10 years. It didn't matter whether it was Obama or Trump or Biden. He's like, look, this shit is all going on. Right. And the people at the top aren't doing shit. It's not getting better. It's still brutal. It's still violent. It's still a terrible voyage. And everything that's happening on the border, there's a lot of not good. There's too many people that are getting through that are completely unaccounted for. No matter what your stance is, people running across the border, us having no idea who they are, what they're trying to do. If they're looking for a better life, great. Still need to be accounted for, right? Sure. Like, still a civil society. And then a lot of these people aren't. They're not people that we want in our communities because some of them are legitimately very, very bad people. They're trying to escape the cartels out of fear for their own lives, but they're not trying to change their ways, right?
Right.
Like
or they're working for the cartels.
Right.
I mean,
there's all sorts of there's a lot of bad that gets through. It's a national security, local safety issue that needs to be addressed. And saying that doesn't make you a racist or a xenophobe or whatever. I mean, that if we want to live in a civil society, then these are sort of things that we need to address. And listen, what's happening down there isn't civil. If you care about those people, you do not want that situation as it stands right now to continue.
100%.
It has to change. Right. Even if you're a bleeding heart liberal, you want that situation down there to be better, more organized, and a way for us to account for it.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think this is an area that the Democratic Party as a whole, and certainly the Biden administration, has been very weak. I mean, I don't know what they're doing other than saying,
And that's the thing. Like you said it earlier, I don't know their plan. Right? They said they got a border czar, maybe. But all I hear about them is complaining about Greg Abbott down in Texas because Greg Abbott does something different and stupid every week because he's screaming for help. We got a problem, and it's partisan and MAGA and all that other stuff, but it is a problem.
Yeah,
right? And so if you don't like the way that he's going about it, then you got to acknowledge it and you have to address it. And the way they're doing that, well, we're going to put together a team and we're reviewing it and we're looking at it and our heart goes out to our brothers and sisters that are trapped. Like, okay, right?
Sure.
And you could talk about him, Abbott, and DeSantis, flying people to different states. That's awful and terrible, right? But then those people get to the different states. Right, and then the mayors and the governors are like, "This is like, you stop doing it. We don't know what are we supposed to do with them." And the people down in Texas are like, "Yeah, what the fuck are we supposed to do with them?" Right, and it's just like, so somebody like this is a federal problem, and the federal government needs to step in. Otherwise, then the guy down in Texas, Greg, then he's going to continue to do what he's going to do, and yeah, he's an asshole about it, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again. We don't know the plan from a political standpoint.
And if they have one, then shame on them for doing just a shit job of getting it out there.
Right.
Right? Like,
well, if they have a plan, it's not working.
Right.
We've established
there's that. Right? And like, we had the assistant under vice secretary of travel was on CNN and talked to one of the people at 8 o'clock at night. You didn't see it 7 months ago? Right, like you need to be talking about this every fucking day. You have to get it into the news cycle, whatever your plan is, and then you better show something from it because there's nothing right now. Like you're letting Fox News and Newsmax and Tucker Carlson and all these people drive the narrative. You're not doing anything to counteract it other than call them racist.
Right.
And I'm sorry, that's not working. Even if you believe it, even if it's fucking true, you still need to have some sort of a plan. And just saying, well, what they're doing is racist, so they need to stop it. Okay, well, what are you going to do?
And just calling people racist and saying, job well done, completely drives people away from your party. Because they're like, wait a minute, I'm a racist because I don't want cartel members coming over the border? That does not...
Or I don't want people being human trafficked brought through my property. Like, so yeah. I think that's bad. Right? I feel terrible for those people. I can't help them. I don't want that to continue to happen. So can we do something to reduce that, stop it, whatever, get control of it? And calling that out and being attacked as you don't like brown people or whatever is just unacceptable, right? And that's what the Democratic Party is doing. So again, if you've got a plan, DNC, Democrats, Biden, Harris, whoever, then you need to be promoting it daily and showing how it's effective. And if you don't have metrics and you don't have proof that it's actually working, then you need to say, we're building out a new plan and you need to keep people updated on how that's going.
I would love to think about ways to make it better. I don't know what they are. I don't know if you want to use National Guard at the border. But then what do you do? Because now you got people crossing the border. You've got armed guardsmen. That doesn't solve the problem.
Right. I mean, I think it's not a black and white issue. It's not a one sort of thing. There's a lot of things from politically that you need to do, from the military standpoint and the criminal standpoint. There's the social issue of, even though we have the people here, how do we deal with them? Are there places where maybe it makes sense to put a wall up? Okay, sure. Yeah.
Maybe.
And we have those places. Do they need to be fortified or reinforced or whatever? Yes, we probably should listen to the environmental people who say, if you put a wall here, it's going to create flooding and it's going to fuck up the environment. Like, that needs to be taken into consideration. Like I said, I'm big on the technology thing, drones, X-ray, night vision X-ray, all that sort of high-tech stuff. A, because it's cool. B, because it works.
C, because you love drones?
Yes. Lawyers, judges, all that other shit. Like, there's a lot that needs to go into it. Like I said, maybe billions, maybe trillions. But what I do know is that is worth the investment. Not because I hate brown people and I don't want them coming over, but because the situation right now, as it currently exists, is not humane. Right? So we need to fix, from a humanitarian standpoint, we need to fix it, which will trigger every other thing that we just talked about that would help that situation.
Well, since we talked about the wall, let's talk about Trump. So I, again, watched a lot of news today. MSNBC was piling on Trump, which is not out of character for Morning Joe. But Trump was, I literally, like, sometimes they were saying things like Trump talked about beating Obama in 2016 and beating him again in 2020. He did say that, but I think he was just fumbling over words. He also said that if Biden is reelected, he'll get us into World War II, and they were pounding on him for that. And again, that's really dumb. Like, I don't know how you make that fuck up if you don't know how. But I want to get to the whales.
Go ahead.
When I hear a person describe what he said, I'm skeptical because they don't like him, and so they can twist and turn things a little bit, and sometimes it's more fun to make it better. I heard him say that windmills off the coast of South Carolina are killing whales. He said, just 3 washed up on shore the other day, and I didn't follow up and check, but windmills don't kill whales.
The only thing I would say is look into it, see, like, maybe a whale ran into a...
Windmills aren't they're in the ocean, but they're not spinning out of the ocean.
I don't know what he's talking about. And I don't know...
Either does he.
Well, yes. I don't know if windmills are killing whales. I feel like that's one of those things where I'm sure there's probably an article somewhere where somehow...
I can tell you the backstory.
Okay.
So, people who hate environmentalists hate wind power because it's renewable and cheap. Lots of places around the country have had wind farms put up in their neighborhoods, and they hate the way they look. And so they've been vilified by the right for a very long time. And when I was still living in Buffalo, this was 2007, 2008, I was out hunting in the middle of nowhere, and there were multiple signs saying no wind turbines. And I looked at my cousin I was hunting with, and I was like, what are they talking about? He was like, you don't see that windmill? I'm like, okay, I could have put 2 and 2 together. But the other claim is that it's killing the bird population, which I don't think has been validated in any way. But, this wind power has become a lightning rod for the right, and Trump knows who to throw red meat to. And it's in the oceans.
According to the Department of Energy, as of now, there is no evidence to support speculation that noise resulting from wind development-related site characterization surveys could potentially cause mortality of whales, and no specific links between recent large whale mortalities and currently ongoing surveys. So I think obviously someone put out an article that that could possibly be killing whales, and then Trump says, well, this is obviously happening and it's bad, and I'm going to use it on the campaign trail.
Right, and you won't get fact checked, and that crowd that hates that thing is just one more piece of red meat.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing that got me, he was down in South Carolina, and he goes to a gun shop and pretends that he's buying a gun, right?
Right.
And from just a PR standpoint, this is such a fuck up because, one, he's under federal indictment. Now, whether you want to call it bullshit, witch hunt, or whatever, he is under federal indictment. And so when you get the form for your license or to buy a gun, right, that everyone, FFL, right, like your FFL, that everybody's got to fill out, that everyone has to submit, it goes to the NIS or NICS or whatever. It goes through that whole process, and the ATF uses it. I don't particularly like it because we know that it's creating a gun registry, which is banned by the Second Amendment, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, everyone has to do this, right? Every state, you buy a gun, from a licensed gun dealer, you have to fill out this form. And one of the questions is, are you under felony indictment? Yes or no? If the answer is no, denied. You can't buy a gun. Or I'm sorry, if the answer is yes, you're under felony indictment, you cannot purchase a firearm, right? Period, blank, the end. That's it. That's the rule, hard and fast. So if he's doing that, if he's actually buying a gun, right, then it's just like, are you filling out that form? If you are you filling it out honestly, right? Because if you're filling it out honestly, that means you're checking yes under that box and you're not getting that gun, so you're not purchasing a gun. But then if you did purchase the gun and now you have it in your possession, that means that you lied on the form, right? Or they didn't run the form, and you and that person are in direct violation of federal law, right? And then if you actually have the gun, you're in violation of federal law because you're under felony indictment, and you're not allowed to have one if you're under indictment, right? So here's the other issue. Trump doesn't know. One of my favorite lines from Ozark, he don't know shit about fuck when it comes to guns. Okay? So he got this gun. You're on the campaign trail. Well, you go to something like, you go to TriggerCon, you go to SHOT Show or something like that, and they ask you, hey, you got that Glock 17. How do you like the read? Right. He doesn't know shit about the gun, anything about it. He's going to give some bullshit answer, and any real gun person is going to be like, what the fuck? You don't know the first thing about guns. Right? It's just from a PR standpoint, it was just a terrible idea.
It's kind of like when John Kerry tried to sell himself to the hunting crowd by going out and going goose hunting, and then didn't have a goose in his bag, and they're like, they didn't want the optics of him dragging the goose back. But I got to throw the potential irony out here. Hunter Biden has been indicted for lying on that form. Now, he was asked, are you an addict? And he said no, and that's what he's been indicted for.
Yes.
So we both know Trump didn't buy the gun. But
right. I mean, but then there's also the fact that now you have to, like, you get called out for it, and it's just like, if he's filling out that form and he's buying it the legal way, then he is in violation of federal law. But now you have to go back and explain, it was just a photo op, right? And there are people in the gun community who are pissed about it.
Okay, good.
Right? Like, they're like, well, and there are a lot of people in the 2A community, like, they're single issue voters. All they care about is guns, right? They don't care about the other stuff, and a lot of them are done with Trump because, he let the bump stock ban through. He was, some other stuff, like some other things that, as it relates to ARs and all that other stuff, like, he didn't push back on. And, he came out and said different things. Oh, well, we're going to get these guns off the street, blah, blah, blah. So they're done with them because their only issue is this. And it's like, look, if you don't support them, we don't support you. Which is, why I've said, what have I said for I don't know how long? If Democrats just switch their positions on guns, they would never lose another election.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear that there is a pushback, because the one of my many complaints about Trump and Trump supporters is they don't hold him accountable for shit. He can say, I did this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to end the war in 24 hours. They're like, ah! But the gun crowd will hold you accountable.
The gun crowd don't fuck around. Gun crowd, like, there's a huge pushback in the gun community against the NRA because, like, between their different lawsuits, a lot of shit came out how, they were, not nearly the advocates that they were supposed to be, and that they were just taking money. Some of the stuff that they didn't really lobby hard enough against that got through. They're just like, you guys are full of shit. So the USCCA, which is like an insurance company for licensed CCW holders, which I actually have insurance through. And you get some cool stuff when you sign up with them, but they have like classes and education. Okay. It's actually a really good organization. It's what the NRA should have been. And probably started out at, it started out as, but
hunting hours.
Right. But then it like the USCCA, and I get all my US acronyms between powerlifting and everything else screwed up, so I apologize. But, like they have picked up a lot of support and membership and buy-in because they are single issue. It's we don't care about money. We don't care about private jets and $20,000 suits, Wayne LaPierre. We just care about, gun owners and gun rights. And they've done some amicus briefs on some of these recent cases dealing with the ATF that have been very effective.
What is an amicus brief? Because I don't know.
That's when you're like, so you're not involved in a case, but it's just like based off of our expertise, they write a brief in a federal case that gets kind of taken into account. It's
almost like a precedent without a case.
Somewhat like it's just like, look, this is our view of the legal argument, right, in support of this or against that, right? So here's our view on how the law should be read, and you should look at it because we have this level of experience. I was involved with the amicus brief that was related to housing a few years back in 2018. Kind of cool experience for me, but it's just it gives the presiding judge the additional insight on things to look for when they're making a decision, when they're looking to make a ruling.
Okay.
And amicus briefs are they're steady part of federal.
That I didn't, and a lot of people listening probably wouldn't. All right. Well, if the 2A crowd turned on Trump and was vocal about it, I would love that.
Well, the issue is though. I mean, they're just one of many factions in that group. And the problem is they are very vocal about it, but people are kind of going to be your Fox crowd your Fox News is going to be reluctant to, if they're too hardcore 2A, Fox News is going to be reluctant to put them on because the 2A crowd has criticisms for both DeSantis and Trump. Right, so it's they want to control that narrative. It's don't go too talk about guns, but don't go if you're going to go against our guy, then maybe not. Right, so that's where their voice is somewhat limited, but it's still worth noting. Right, that particular faction out of many is not happy with your front runners there, and that's something everyone needs to take into account, which I've long said the Democrats really need to look at that and think about it.
Yeah, you've been very consistent, and I completely agree with you. And we also know it won't fucking happen.
No.
And that's the way you're saying Trump doesn't know shit about guns or doesn't know fuck about guns.
None of these people.
Biden doesn't either.
Right. And none of these fucking people do it. I mean, and look, not everybody needs to be fucking John Wick and or a gunsmith or whatever. Right. And so it's, when you know about a thing, right, whether it's, you hear people talk about guns and you're just those things don't even go together. Or, for me, people talking about, fitness, working out and all that other stuff, it's oh, you shouldn't be talking about this. Right.
Right.
It gets frustrating. But when you listen to our, the people who are making decisions about guns, and then you put one in their hand, and it's just it literally looks like something that fell out of outer space. So they just start making up things about the gun that aren't remotely close. You're look, if you're going to tell me, if you're going to ban this, or you need to know what the fuck it is.
I don't know if we said this on the show, but I know we said it in a conversation. That one congressman from Florida that I like, the guy that represents Parkinson's district, I'm not going to come up with his name. Democrat.
You don't like him that much.
No, you're right. He came out and said, we don't need ARs. You know why it's illegal to hunt deer with an AR? There's nothing left. Dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Right. I mean, a 223 is so underpowered for deer hunting. The gun I hunt with is a bolt-action rifle, not a weapon of,
gas or piston-driven.
Right. But it's substantially more powerful than a 223. Mm-hmm. And when you make those arguments, the 2A crowd hears you and goes, I will no longer take you seriously on this issue.
Right. And a lot of people will be oh, so, it's not about whether an AR is an assault rifle. That's an annoying argument whether, the 2A crowd makes, it's just Armalite, it doesn't stand. Okay, well, it's the same shit I say about Democrats, right? Okay, you won the semantics argument. Congratulations. Now, what the fuck is that actually doing for the actual issue at hand? Nothing, right? So maybe what AR actually stands for, and it doesn't stand for assault rifle, and whether you want to debate whether a AR-15 civilian rifle is an assault rifle or not, that doesn't fucking matter. That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand, right, are the various restrictions that people are trying to put on that type of rifle, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and other things like it. But, Trump and his pandering, he knows what the recipe for success is. He's following that playbook. There are some people that have grown tired of his shtick and his act. The question is, how tired are they? Will they still vote for him? The numbers say yes, likely. But the problem is he's been in 2 close races, right?
Yep.
And so losing a little bit of support is not good for him. It's fine for him in the primary. It is not good for him in the general election. The only problem is that Biden and his crew, they can't stop stepping on their own dicks. So it's again, we're lining up for another close race, and that means election. We're going to hear about election fraud and security, blah blah blah, and all that other bullshit, which will make things messy again. And
there's a Republican debate coming up this week. I want to say Thursday, but I wonder if this will come up
tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow? Okay. I wonder if it will come up in that. If I'm Ron DeSantis, I'm mocking Trump for his gun lack of knowledge on the stage. And that's probably a way for him to win over some of that crowd, because Ron DeSantis was in the fucking Navy. I'm guessing the guy knows his way around a firearm. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes up.
Yeah, I mean, that would be... I don't know. DeSantis is so... That's an interesting situation for me, like, just to see how bad he's falling apart. Like, I mean, I'm seeing reports that, he's... running out of money, and we're going to start seeing layoffs from his campaign. I don't know if that's true or accurate, but just like getting him completely wrong is just fascinating to me. Not because I'm not used to being wrong, but just seeing it, and you're just like, wow, you are really awful. Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see in real time.
It is. And he's going to debate Gavin Newsome in a couple weeks. And that's going to be interesting. Because talk about two guys of different... so I'm convinced this is Gavin Newsom's, the California governor's, attempt to shine a light on him and say, hey, you guys were kind of done with Biden. Look at me. And
you
it might work.
You think he's going to try to jump in the 24 election?
That's what I'm suggesting, yes.
Okay.
I mean, do I think it's going to happen? No. But I think that's what his reason for doing this is.
And I agree. And I don't like it because I don't like him. I think Gavin Newsom is just everything about him says. Just look at fucking California. It is a shit show. But I wonder, is it for 24? Is it possibly for 28? Right? Like, so let me go out there, get my name, let this shit show happen. By that point in time, Biden won't be able to run again. Trump won't be able to run again for any number of reasons, between indictments. He's old and not in the best of shape. Whatever, I don't know. He'll be,
he'll be 80 if he's.
He'll be 80
Yep.
If he wins. He won't be able to run again. And then if he doesn't win by 28, he'll be in no condition to be president at that point in time. So is Gavin trying to make himself the front runner for 28? I think that both things could be true.
Yeah.
I think it could be, maybe I'll jump into 24. If things don't look good, I can say I was just doing this for 28 and hopefully be the front runner and carry that momentum through, which then you hope it's a Jeb Bush sort of situation where he was a foregone conclusion until he wasn't, because I really don't like Gavin Newsom.
Right. Well, it could also be I'm going to show up, and when Biden doesn't want Harris around anymore, I'm your backup plan.
Maybe. I don't know. And that's an interesting point too. Would Biden decide to move on from Harris to get a stronger voice in there? I really liked Harris early on in the 2020 race, but then she just sort of really fizzled for me, and then apparently for everybody else, because she was, I think, one of the first to punch out. Of the notable candidates, even though there were a lot, but so we'll see. That's a good call. I hadn't thought about him, trying to make a move for VP, but just something to watch.
I want to really quick talk about the fact that we're facing a potential government shutdown. We have like 3 days to avoid that. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that next show if it happens. But to not acknowledge that hanging over the country is.
I don't want to talk about it for a different reason, because if it shuts down, it directly impacts me and our company because of our federal grants, which we have a couple big ones that we got that are supposed to be paid out at the about halfway through October. So if there's a government shutdown and it runs, it could directly impact things for us, and that would not be good.
I can understand why that would be very high on your list.
I want to talk positive vibes only, and I'm hoping that they get a continuing resolution and we get this figured out. But we can, next show, if we talk about it, I mean, then, I'm going to be coming from a very personal angle. So, I might be a little worked up if it does go through. But I do want to talk NFL. I wanted to, I love it. It's football. It's football season. My Steelers got a big win this week, beating the Raiders.
And won money for me.
Good. Beat the Raiders at home. And we still are struggling on offense. Defense is playing pretty well. Ben don't break, and TJ Watt is still a freak. But so is Alex Highsmith, which is even better. But NFL running backs is what you have here.
Right.
And I'm glad we're talking about this because before the season, right as training camp was getting started, maybe a little bit before, a lot of the NFL running backs were really making a lot of noise about them. Like, hey, we need to be paid more. Like it's like we're centerpieces around the offense. The Browns lost Nick Chubb, and so what is their offense now? And I think what's interesting is Saquon Barkley was leading that charge.
Jonathan Taylor
was leading that charge. Eckler out in LA. With the Chargers was leading that charge. Najee Harris from the Steelers was in on that conversation. And Saquon Barkley injured, not playing. He's got an ankle. He'll be back, but we don't know when. He's missed one game. Definitely going to miss another one, maybe more. Jonathan Taylor has yet to play this year.
Right.
Eckler, out. Not for the whole season, but he's out. Nick Chubb, blown Achilles.
Yep.
Out for the year. Maybe longer, but I don't know. That guy's a freaky
ACL.
Or ACL, I'm sorry. Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles. But you've got a number of your top, almost all those guys who were talking about you need to pay us more. Oh, Achilles. J.K. Dobbins is the one who blew his Achilles.
Oh, okay.
With Baltimore, and he was another one who was asking for more money. So their argument is this is why we need more money because we take the most risk because of the position in which we play. The league stance is like, look, you guys are valuable, but there's a lot more of you, a lot more people who can do what you do as opposed to what the quarterbacks do. Frankly, the receivers or the linemen. So you are the most expendable, and so we're not going to pay you what you want. We're going to pay you what we want, and what we want is significantly less than pretty much any other position in the league, based on the time they touch the ball and their impact to the game. The other problem that they have is that some of these teams, without them, are still having success, whether the replacement has stepped up and been just as effective, or they figured out different ways to work the offense without the running game, right? So, I mean, the Colts are 2-1. I think
they beat Baltimore the other day, right?
Yeah, they beat Baltimore the other day, and I think they had won another game. So I think the Colts are 2-1.
Without Jonathan Taylor.
Without Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris has not had a big year. Now, the Steelers' offensive line is terrible, but he's averaging 4.5 yards a carry with 40 yards a game. J.K. Dobbins out. He's out for the whole year. Again, Saquon Barkley, the Giants, they actually hadn't won with him, and then they came out and were able to get a win. And again, without him, it just like the argument, like the running backs don't have a great leg to stand on, and it sucks. I was a running back. I played the position, not in the NFL, but I played the position, so obviously I empathize with them. I root for guys to get the most money that they can. I don't have an issue with holdouts. I don't have an issue with guys renegotiating their contracts because I know the sport is brutal. You have a short amount of time to make the money. There's no other job in the world where anybody would encourage someone to leave money on the table when it comes to negotiating their contract and their salary. So why the fuck would we do it just because we don't like the fact that these guys make a lot of money to play a game? It's still a game that people pay a lot of money to see one way or another. It has a huge economic impact on the places where it is played. So, I root for them, but at the same time, as a business owner, as a person who just understands basic math, they don't have a good argument other than, like, look, we get injured and we want to make as much money as we can. I'm sure you do. But from a business standpoint, it don't make any sense for me to pay you all that money because your shelf life is short. Once you hit 30, downhill, chances are you're not getting another contract. So it's just your contracts aren't going to be long, and even though you're getting short contracts, they're not going to be that big, and that sucks. I don't know how you help running backs because you're going to see more teams going by committee, making sure that they've got multiple backs, and they're not going to pay one guy exorbitantly more when you got to pay receivers and quarterbacks, and the big game is built around passing.
Right, but that's where I wanted to go because this week, lots of teams ran the ball very well. Miami dropped like 600 yards on the ground with
70 points.
70 points.
They went fucking. They went PlayStation.
And they called off the dogs.
Yes.
Which is, at that point, I get it.
And that game's an outlier because Miami was literally able to do whatever they wanted to do. And it was crazy because I was looking at the plays. 10-play drive, 12-play drive, 9-play drive, 6-play drive. They weren't just a bunch of big plays over and over again. There were no defensive scores.
Right. 10 offensive touchdowns.
Right. It was just that they literally, the Bears could not stop them. I mean, it was fucking embarrassing. Right? Was it the Bears? Broncos. Yeah, sorry. Orange and blue. Yeah. Sorry. Sean Payton, all that shit you talked that I backed you up on don't look so good. I mean, the Jets stink. And I think there's plenty of questions about Nathaniel Hackett. Is he a quarterback whisperer, or did he have his best years working with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is just a fucking freak, and Nathaniel Hackett is an idiot? I watched did you watch Hard Knocks?
I did not watch much, a few minutes of it.
I would watch it. I would watch the whole thing. I love Hard Knocks. I just, having been through training camp and camps, all that stuff, I love it. It does give you a different perspective. Gave me a whole new, different vantage point on Aaron Rodgers. I still think he's an arrogant prick, but I can relate to him a little bit more. The relationship between him and Randall Cobb is something I can appreciate. The one thing I've learned about Aaron Rodgers, he's a ride or die. Like if Aaron Rodgers says you're his boy, he is going to make sure you are taken care of. People were talking about the players. He got coaches on that staff. He got like the equipment guy he brought from Green Bay.
And then he gets hurt 4 plays in.
Oh my God.
And I genuinely feel for the guy.
I felt for him. I felt for the Jets, the fans that you want to beat him. You don't want him to beat whatever. Sure. But that is just brutal. I also called it. I called that he was going to end. I'm calling it for Joe Burrow. Those calf injuries, those calf injuries are directly related to your Achilles. And even though it's hard as fuck to tear an Achilles, for athletes with all the different movements you do and everything else, and when you start having those calf injuries, those are an indicator that your Achilles is going to go. And there are very specific things that you need to do that these guys aren't doing. I called it with Aaron Rodgers, and I'm telling you, Joe Burrow is going to blow an Achilles in the next 2 years.
Again, I hope not.
I don't want that to happen. I like Joe Burrow, even though he's in our division, and he is, when he's on, he is nasty. But I see, I'm just telling you, biomechanics, those calf injuries are not, it's not your calf, it's the muscles and everything that ties into your Achilles, and that thing's gonna pop if they don't address it. I know how, and I can do it for a fee.
A modest fee. Or not so modest fee.
If the government shutdown happens. If not, then I don't fuck your money out.
All right. We want to wrap it up on that?
Wrap it up.
Steve lands a zinger. All right, we are At Whiskey Congress on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever the fuck, Threads. And the fact that everyone needs to say X tells me how stupid that branding is. And we're done.